so to say, last week we talked beyond grades, how children really learn, and we had our guest in the studio talking about Sarah Adana Isiape, and we talked how children really learn beyond grades. And last week we were able to identify the different type of learners. We talked visual learners, auditory learners, and all of that. I'm sure Sarah will do well to give us a recap this morning. And today we'll wrap up on that conversation. And like I already told her, we're going to do what we call hot takes. What are the realities in the academia versus the expectations? What do we have now? What would be better if we had it? How could we just make things better? How could we impact more? How do we make learning even more fun? How do we make it more inclusive, so to say? How do we get people that are determined to want to go to school, not for the sake of wanting to come back with a certificate so they could get jobs, so they could put food on their tables? How do we, what, what's the future looking like? Do we really have people that are going to be diligent, dedicated teachers in another decade to come? We're going to have our hot takes on all of that, but let's hear her do for us a quick run through of all she shared with us last week, and then we go into it this morning. Good morning, Sarah. You look so amazing. Thank you so much for joining me.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so last week we talked about beyond grades, how children really learn, and we got to understand that good grades doesn't mean that a child is learning, that a child comes home with good grades or even bad grades cannot tell that a child is learning. And we got to understand that children have different ways that they learn. There are the visual learners, there are the auditory learners, there are the reading and writing learners, and there's the kinesthetic learners. And we got to understand that visual learners are the ones who, no matter what you tell them, they want to see it with their eyes. So they love pictures, they love diagrams, they love drawings. The auditory learners, you don't need to stress so much about them. They just need to hear. They just need someone to read it out to them. They need just a teacher that would explain to them, and that's it. For the reading and writing learners, while you are teaching them, they want to take notes, they want to jot. Then for the kinesthetic learners, they do not sit at a place to learn. It's difficult for them to sit still to learn because it's not in their nature. It's not in their nature. And we got to understand that parents should not just fixate their minds or everything about their children coming home with good grades, but rather they should get to know if their child has really been learning in school, or are you just coming home with good grades, or do I just want you to pass? So we got to understand that good grades, like I said initially, does not equate to the fact that a child is learning.
Thank you so much. And like Sarah said, good grades does not equate to the fact that a child is learning.
Yeah.
So let's do beyond grades 2 this morning. We've been able to open up how children really learn. We've been able to understand. We get it now. So moving beyond that first step, understanding how children really learn. What then should parents, teachers, and schools do differently, seeing as we've been able to identify the different techniques of learning, right? So let's have a conversation talking awareness. From awareness that we had yesterday, we're talking action this morning. How do we go on to create learning environments that support rather than frustrate children? Why is understanding not enough when it comes to improving academic performance?
Okay, so understanding is not enough because a child who you think that is just nodding their head, okay, yes, I get it. That's not enough because at the end of it all, when they have an exam or a test to write, you would realize that, but they didn't do well. Why? What happened? But I thought you said you understood it. Trust me, the child is just trying to tell you that they understand because maybe they are not confident enough to open up and tell you that they do not understand. Maybe they've been scolded before, or probably their teacher told them, but how come you're the only person in this class that does not understand this thing? Every other person understands. So you saying that, do you understand is, what understanding is very important, right? Is that the question you asked me?
What understanding
Alone,
is not
okay.
enough
Yes, it's not
when
enough.
we're talking about improving
Yes,
academic
academic.
performance.
Yes, so it's not enough because if a child who claims to understand what they are saying, and then you tell them to repeat what I just said or explain in your own understanding what I just said, and they're unable to, dish it out to you. It means that all that you've been teaching so far, has been null. So it's not enough because their interest and way of learning cannot be taken out of it. So you would see a child, let me give an example of a child who will tell you that they understand but cannot explain it. It's a child who, when you say, okay, this math concept that I just talked about, I just explained in class now. Can you, in your own words, explain to us, the school, the teachers, or explain to your students, your classmates, and then they are staring at you, looking at you, and they're like, but I don't get it. But when it's being taught in their way of understanding, probably for a kinesthetic learner right now who doesn't sit at a place. So when the child is being taught in a way that suits their interest, they'll be able to dish out. So it is important that when you're teaching a child, you are teaching a child in their mode and way of learning, which is if it's a visual learner, you're making sure that no matter what you're teaching, you are giving a graphic representation of what it is. If it's an auditory learner, even as much as you are teaching, you are explaining it in a way that they get it. Then for a reading and writing learner, you are also making sure that they are taking notes. Then for kinesthetic learner, they should come out and demonstrate it because they won't be able to sit at a place and just get it. Demonstration will make them, or practicals will make them understand it better. So it is important that when you're teaching a child, you are looking at teaching them in line with their type of learning style. Yes.
We're talking effective learning support. We've been able to identify how they learn. Now we want to help them, right? So when we're talking effective learning support, what does that actually look like, especially in a traditional classroom? How
Okay.
can teachers achieve helping children understand now perfectly after learning their own various ways? How does effective support manifest in a traditional classroom?
Okay. So, for instance, let's talk about a public school. Public schools where they have 1,001 students, and in a class they can have over 100. So, you do not expect that a teacher, or I do not expect that a teacher should teach every child one by one because that will not be effective. So, but it is expected that the teacher should be flexible enough. So, flexible in the sense that when you are teaching a concept, you are not just standing before the students in the classroom and just speaking. You should also bring visuals, something that they can literally see to understand what you're saying. At the same time, you should have practicals. So, for instance, there's some subjects that do not require going to the laboratory to explain what you're trying to say. But if it is possible for you to bring out two students to demonstrate what you're teaching, that would make the ones who are kinesthetic learners understand and grab it at the same time. Then for the reading and writing learners, while you are talking, you're writing on the board so that they can literally see what you're saying. So in that way, you've covered up the four learning styles. You're not just coming to the classroom and standing before everybody and you're like, okay, Ada is a girl and that's it. And they're like, okay, the ones who get that Ada is a girl will go with it and they will pass exams. Then the ones who needs to literally see that Ada is a girl, they need to see that, oh, to be a girl, then you should have a hair. To be a girl, you should put on earrings. To be a girl, you should be this. Okay, then they grab it. Then the ones that are practical, then they're literally saying that this is who a girl is, this is how a girl walks, this is how she is. So you are touching the four learning styles because you are being flexible. You're not just sitting on the lecture method where you just come, you just teach, you dish out, and you're done. The ones who can pick up by just lecturing to them will pick it up and they will run with it. Then the ones who struggle because they are visual learners or they are kinesthetic learners, they can sit at a place to learn, they'll be the ones struggling in class. So the best way teachers, educators can do that is by being flexible in the classroom, bringing in the entire learning styles so that every child is carried along.
She said that we need to be flexible in the classroom. We need to be able to merge all the learning styles together.
Yeah.
It's how all children can be carried along. Now let's take it back home. Last week we were able to establish the fact that comparison isn't good for children.
Children.
We cited examples of siblings that are that learn differently, even if they're raised in the same home, the same school, the same parents, the same everything, and you're wondering why is one doing better. You have access to equal opportunities, quote and unquote, good school, good teachers, a supportive environment, but then we've been able to establish that when we are when we have identified their learning style, we just might see some difference. So comparison in its own
Yeah.
doesn't work. So now let's talk about more ways that parents can support at home beyond home supervision. What are some practical ways that parents can support learning at home without making the home now turn into an extension of the classroom? How
Classroom.
do we make it work? How do we utilize the time? How do we utilize that learning style without making everybody feel like, oh, as we are told now, everywhere feels serious, so this is not your comfort zone anymore. How do we allow them open their hearts,
Yeah.
open their minds to want to learn, how
To
to
learn.
incorporate
Yeah.
it effectively?
Okay, so because the schools may not be able to identify the entire students' learning styles, so this is where the parents come in. It is expected that parents should be able to figure out by observation who their child is and the kind of learning style that they have. And after they've been able to observe and now understand that this is how and who my child is, when it now comes to learning, for instance, when it comes to doing an assignment or reading a book, for you have a parent who has a child who is visual. So for instance, let me give a story. Yesterday, I was counseling a parent who she complained about her son. He can pick up his tab and he would design everything. Just give him an animation to watch and he can, design it. He's very creative. He can build things from scratch on his tab, but he doesn't like maths. He doesn't like mathematics. And I got to tell her that. And the other thing she complained about was that he doesn't sit still when it comes to his academics. He doesn't sit still when it comes to his academics. If at all he gets him to sit still, he's distracted. And then he's like, Mommy, can I ask you this question? Mommy, the food you put on fire, have you taken it out? Something totally different from what he's trying to study. And I told her that the challenge is not that your son doesn't like mathematics. The challenge is that you've not been able to understand that he loves creativity. And because he loves creativity, he's a visual person. He wants to see things in order to understand it. And if you don't bring maths into his world, that's the reason why he would continually run away from maths and hate mathematics. So for parents, it is important that when you've understood how your child is and how they learn, their academics should be brought into their world and not the academics separately and their world separately. So for instance, for a creative child, you do not separate their creativity from learning how to solve maths. They should learn how to solve maths even in their creativity. So I gave her an example. You can tell him to create a character based, or he can just create something using creativity to solve math concepts. So he can just probably even draw a character, but at the same time, he's using maths concepts to describe what he's saying. So for parents, after you've understood and identified your child's learning style or preference or even their interest, do not separate it from academics. Bring in academics into their world so that you're not separating it and then they're running away from studying because you're trying to make them study a certain way. You're telling the child who doesn't like to just read books because it's looking too long to just come and sit and be solving maths questions. He wants to literally get involved. He wants to be creative with maths. So that's the way parents can, do such a thing at home with their children.
Amazing. We need to look for a way to make it blend.
Blend.
So let's not create a different book altogether. Let's
Yeah.
stop making reading time feel like, oh, this is serious time. Don't smile again.
Mm.
Sit in one place, put yourself together. We need to be
Work.
That goes on to tell parents that they have to be more observant.
Observant.
To some sort of conclusion. So I think in essence this is also a call for parents to be a bit more vocal, to be able to speak to people that know these things.
Mm. Mm.
Make their own, do their own research rather than embarrass. We mean maybe speak to their teachers, speak to their school counselors, ask questions, even when you're not educated. And then if for advice we ask these
Questions that you
when
can,
we start
yeah,
to dig deep, that's when we know what exactly is happening. So let's
sure.
go beyond school, seek solution, and then start to seek solutions. As we go on now, school exams, schools we said last week that they're always exam driven, right?
Yeah.
How can teachers still support different learning needs with, okay, no, we already talked about how we can support with, even in the crowd, you already had told us this morning that let's try to make it all inclusive.
Inclusive.
Bearing in mind that there are four learning styles.
Yeah.
So let's try to be able to incorporate all four learning styles. Now let's talk about the importance of a teacher's attitude in shaping a child's academic confidence.
It is very important. Very, very important. I remember when I was in primary school, and because I had issues with some certain subjects, there was this teacher. She was my class teacher then, because in primary schools, there are class teachers, there are teachers allocated to a classroom. So what she always do to me was to shame me in class. Now you are talking, exam will come now, you don't know what to write. You are talking with those who, and that sticked to my head that I didn't have sense, that I wasn't good enough. The class, or probably because I wasn't understanding what she was teaching. The way she would correct me was to take a flog the back. She would use the edge of the roller at the back. I would never forget that because it was traumatizing. I didn't get what you were teaching. I tried to understand it. That is so traumatizing. They are bad. Started from their school. Bad in the sense that they are not good enough when it comes to academics. Started from making them feel like they are not good. My best, really. Solution that you brought, rather than just saying words that would tear them down. So a lot of students has carried that. So the attitude of a teacher to their learners is very important. Very, very, very important. Those days, yeah, I was so shameful. Whenever I wanted to come to school, it was so shameful for me to go to school because I knew that my teachers were going to look at me like, oh, stand me. She just didn't know how to go about it. She just didn't know what to do. Up.
Let's talk about small change. We're talking small changes in the classrooms that can make learning
Aside the academics. Okay, so how have you been? What's up? How you doing? Is there anything you're finding difficult in the class? Is there anybody making say you don't know books? When you begin having conversations with these students, you get to realize that there's some things that you are doing faulty and improve on. But rather, we want to just give it a one-way thing. We are putting